Hello out there, I'm glad you found the way to this video. Since The Mandalorian Season 3 is finally out, I decided to build Mandos Blaster from the show out of just cardboard. There are free templates linked in the description as well as a list of materials and tools I recommend. Now with all of that, let's get started. So the build starts with a bunch of these base plates. 2 are made from regular cardboard, 3 from a thin cardboard I got from a cereal box, 2 from a thin cardboard with a little hole cut out and the handle separated, and 2 more inverted ones with a larger hole and the handle also separated. With some regular white glue I glued the 2 thin cardboard plates together. Then I took a strip of cardboard and peeled off the very top layer. I used it to cover the corrugation of the cardboard in the little hole. I glued in a small piece of peeled cardboard with hot glue and cut off the excess at the back. This step is really important because it will be done with nearly every single piece in the project. And I also did this for the piece with the larger hole. Now I alternately glued the regular cardboard and the cereal box cardboard plates together. The thin cardboard plates are glued on lastly. I took my time to cover all of the corrugation with the peeled cardboard on this piece. Covering the corrugation is necessary to make the project look as realistic as possible. Now I hot glued together these 2 plates of regular cardboard. I took my template for the handle and traced it onto the plates. I then cut along these inner lines with an angled knife to create beveled edges. The beveled edges make the blaster much more comfortable to hold in the end. I also smashed the bottom edge of this piece with my fingers. The 2 thin cardboard handle plates we left earlier are now glued together. The new piece for the handle gets glued on top of those. I used peeled cardboard to cover the corrugation on the whole handle. You will need 2 of these handle pieces for each side. Oh, and I didn't glue the handles on yet because it's much easier to finish and paint them separated from the blaster. For the barrel I used a 1.2 cm PVC pipe, but I wanted to go with a 1.4 cm diameter, so I wrapped the PVC pipe in cereal box cardboard. For the 2 rings at the end of the barrel, I took a strip of thin cardboard and curved it up by smashing the corrugation. I glued the 2 ends together. On top of that goes a strip of cereal box cardboard. I hot glued the ring on a big chunk of peeled cardboard and cut away all of the excess. I also sanded the edges of the ring to make them slightly rounded. You will need 2 of these rings. Both rings then get superglued at the end of the barrel. From this template I made a funnel-like piece out of cereal box cardboard. Next you will need 9 1.6 cm circles. They get glued together and act as a support for the next step. Like we did for the rings, I curved a thin cardboard strip and glued the ends together. Again, a cereal box cardboard strip gets glued on top. Once the corrugation at the front is covered, I took out the support. This piece is then hot glued to the funnel piece. With some super glue, this piece is secured in front of the rings at the end of the barrel. The front side is made 2 times from thin cardboard with a little slit and once from zero box cardboard. After these 3 parts are glued together and covered in peeled cardboard, they get super glued in a hole I made at the very front of the barrel. With that done, the barrel can be hot glued in place on the blaster. Now we can start the details on the first side of the blaster. The first piece is this L piece made once from regular and once from thin cardboard. There is also a little strip made 2 times from thin cardboard which gets glued to the L piece. The whole piece then gets covered in peeled cardboard. Next I glued 2 strips of zero box cardboard together and cut away a thin 2mm strip. This strip then gets cut in 13 tiny segments. With some super glue they get all placed on the end of the L piece. That whole L piece gets finally glued on the center of the blaster. There is also this piece from zero box cardboard that gets glued below the L piece. Now from zero box cardboard I made a circle, 2 rings and 2 tiny circles. The rings and the tiny circles get glued together and glued onto the circle. I also glued 3 more circles together to form another piece. Both pieces can then be hot glued to the blaster. There is a small rectangle that goes in front of the hole. The next piece is made once from regular and once from thin cardboard. After they are glued together and covered in peeled cardboard, the piece goes over the L piece. The following piece is made twice from thin cardboard. Of course, it gets covered in peeled cardboard, and after that you can glue it to the blaster. There is also a tiny box from regular and thin cardboard covered with peeled cardboard. Then I made twice from zero box cardboard a little latchet which gets curved into a reversed S shape. From a circle of thin cardboard and 2 zero box cardboard half circles, I made a little screw that goes on top of the latchet. That whole piece gets hot glued onto the L piece on the blaster. From zero box cardboard I made many little screws I superglued to the blaster. To finish this side I glued on this last piece made out of thin cardboard. The hammer is made from regular cardboard and twice from thin cardboard. I made a circle from thin cardboard and 6 tiny rings from zero box cardboard and glued 3 rings on each side of the circle. After I wrapped the hammer and the circles in peeled cardboard, I glued the circles to the hammer. Now I took a wooden dowel and cut a very tiny part off of it. This tiny piece sits at the back of the hammer. The hammer is then superglued to the back end of the blaster. The following piece is made 3 times from regular cardboard and 2 times from thin cardboard with a little ear at the back. I poked a detail hole in the thin cardboard ones and glued all the pieces together with the thin cardboard ones on the outside. As always, the piece is covered in peeled cardboard. Now the rear sight is made from 2 cereal box cardboard plates with one having a little cutout. After they are glued on top of each other, I stacked together 6 thin cardboard rectangles and glued them in between the 2 plates. There are 2 more rectangles at the outside of this piece. At last, there is a little cereal box cardboard circle on the right side of the rear sight. The rear sight then gets attached to the piece we made before. There is another little sight made 3 times from cereal box cardboard and covered in peeled cardboard that sits on the new piece. That whole thing then goes on top of the blaster. Same as we did for the L piece, I made a bunch of little strips I superglued to the top of the blaster. Now we move on to the details on the second side. The first piece starts with this base piece and 2 rounded rectangles, with one having the middle cut out. The 2 rounded rectangles are glued to the base piece. I took a 2mm strip of cereal box cardboard and superglued it in place. There are also 2 very tiny strips next to it. The whole thing then gets hot glued to the top of the second side. I stacked up 3 thin cardboard rectangles and glued a cereal box cardboard rectangle with a hole in the middle on top. After covering the corrugation, it looked like this. Next, I took another wooden dowel and carved in tiny triangles on 2 sides. This step is a bit tricky because the dowel can break very easily, so you need to work really patiently and careful here. But the end result is worth it. The dowel then gets superglued to the little box. Now I made this latchet from cereal box cardboard that I curved into a regular S shape. I made a screw out of 3 tiny hexagon shapes from cereal box cardboard, with the top one having a hole in the middle. The screw gets superglued to the latchet. The trigger is made 4 times from thin cardboard and has the edges covered in peeled cardboard. All of these pieces won't be glued on yet because they will get painted gold separated from the blaster. I again glued some cereal box cardboard circles on this side of the blaster to make some screws. For the next piece, I glued together 3 regular cardboard circles and 2 thin cardboard circles on the outside. I wrapped all of the circles in a slightly wider strip of cereal box cardboard. And it should look like this. From 2 times regular and 2 times thin cardboard, I created this new piece. As with the circles, a slightly wider strip of cereal box cardboard is glued to the edges of this piece. Now the 2 pieces can be superglued together. The stand is made from a plate of regular cardboard and 2 plates with holes for the holders and an encarving at the edge for the plaque. On top goes a version from cereal box cardboard. After all the edges are covered in peeled cardboard, it looks like this. The plaque is made from regular and cereal box cardboard. The holders are made 2 times from regular and 2 times from thin cardboard. You will need 2 of these, one shorter one and one longer one. Once both holders are covered in peeled cardboard, they can be glued in the holes on the stand. And now we can finally head on to the finishing. I used a sandable spackle to spackle over the seams on the barrel and some small gaps that occurred during the building. For example, on the hammer, as you can see here. I also went over the very bottom and the trigger hole to have a smooth surface there after sanding. And of course, I also spackled over the 2 handle pieces. You should also smooth out the spackle with some water to help creating a clean and flat surface. After the spackle dried firmly overnight, I sanded down all of the spackled spots with a 240 grit sandpaper. Take your time on this step and sand down all of the little dents and uneven spots. Before we can head on to painting, I gave the whole blaster as well as all of the detail pieces 2 good layers of filler primer. To start painting, I painted the funnel piece and the rings with 3 layers of a silver acrylic paint. After the paint dried, I masked off the 2 pieces with some masking tape. Now I could paint the very front as well as the side black. The rest of the blaster gets painted in a dark silver color. I also used 3 layers on the whole blaster. Then I mixed up some brown, yellow and silver to create a kind of washed gold color. I used this color to paint the pieces for the second side we didn't glue on, as well as the trigger. I forgot that this little box should also be painted gold, so I masked it off and painted it. Now it was time for weathering. I just watered down a black acrylic paint and dabbed it on some surfaces and quickly wiped it away with a paper towel. It is really up to you how much you weather your props. I like mine when they look really used and dirty. With a thin brush I also darkened the slit in between the rings. To do some more weathering, I put a very little amount of silver paint onto my brush and wiped the brush dry on a piece of cardboard. Next I go over the blaster with the dry brush to lighten up some spots and create a metal effect on some edges. This method is called dry brushing. To make the wooden handles, I painted them with 3 layers of a brown paint. It is important to stroke the brush in only one direction to create some wooden fibers. It also helps to use a bristly brush. Now, to create the shadows, I painted in dark brown and wiped it in the direction of the fibers. With the same technique, I created some highlights with a light brown color. And this is how that wooden effect looks like. The 2 holders on the stand got painted silver and masked off at the bottom with masking tape. The rest of the stand is just painted black. I wrote the name of the blaster onto the little plaque. I also painted silver and glued it to the stand. And finally, it's time for the assembly of all of the pieces. I started by placing the trigger in place and putting some super glue around the edges. The wooden dowel is simply glued to the front of the second side, followed by the latchet. The safety switch is superglued at the back over the trigger hole. Now both of the handles are glued into place with superglue. This last piece is glued under the handle. After that is glued on, I sprayed on a layer of clear coat on the whole blaster. And with that, Mandos Blaster is done. Thank you for watching the video. Like and subscribe if you want to see me make more projects like this. Feel free to suggest what I should build in the comments, and I'll see you all soon.